back to little babies to this week's Pachter Factor, tape from home on a Saturday because I worked too hard and I couldn't work this in during a work day. So sorry, but you're not going to see me in the suit probably for the rest of my career because it's just too hard to do it at work. Okay, this week's first question comes from SIFTD. Boy, SIFTD got all the questions this week. From Alex. I like that. You must have been like the first guy to join SIFTD. We have seen some high-profile games such as Titanfall 2 and Battlefront 2 ditch the season pass option. Do you think this is a new direction we will be seeing more and more with other games? Yes, I do. And I think that's a very perceptive question. Look, back in the dark ages, you know, like PlayStation 3, there were games, the publishers figured out when the PS3 and the Xbox 360 came out, we can sell you a game and we get our $60, you know, retailer gets some of it. But we get our $60 and that's all we get from you. What if you play the game for like a year? So they figured out they can sell you something called DLC. And it started out, you know, DLC when what first was invented, first early ones, 06, $15, not 20, $15. And most games had like one DLC pack, and then of course Call of Duty went, oh wait a minute, it's like 3, maybe 4. So they kept coming out. Then someone said, we can charge you 20. And I don't actually remember who the first guy was that charged 20, because you kind of got these DLCs that were like mini games. So like if you guys remember GTA 4, the Battle of Gay Tony, or the something of Gay Battle. There you go. The Ballad of Gay Tony. Yeah, exactly. But you know, it was like DLC, but it had a name, and you know, and then we start getting these naming conventions, and it's like I can't even remember what the hell all the Destiny download packs are called. But and then Destiny, of course, like keep doing it, like oh DLC in the 3rd year. So they were trying that, and then Activision came along and they made the mistake of coming up with this Call of Duty Elite, and they kind of made it look like the first year. I think it was 11 or something. They made it look like, oh, you only get cool stuff if you're an Elite member, but effectively it morphed into a season pass because Activision realized that was a mistake. They were giving you perks that you couldn't get if you didn't buy it, and you couldn't just buy the DLC. You had to be an Elite member. Anyway, they got rid of all that. They turned it into just a season pass. So EA actually called it season pass, which I think was smart. I think they did this with Battlefield 4 or something, or Battlefield Bad Company, one of those games. And they had season pass. And all the season pass is a discounted plan to get all the DLC. So it's typically $50, and you get 3 or 4 $20 download packs. So it's a pretty good deal. And what they found was not that many people did it. So let's pretend it's Call of Duty. Let's pretend Call of Duty sells 20 million units. I'm just using nice round numbers. What Activision would find is that the first of the 4 DLC packs would sell like 10 million units. So 20 million people would buy 10 million of that. The second one would sell 5. The third would sell 3, and the fourth would sell 2. So they were only selling 20 million individual downloads on 20 million units of the game. So let's go with retail price. So if the game costs 60 and the DLC is 20, they were selling 20 million copies of a game at 60, 20 million pieces of downloadable content at 20. So the dollars they got out of the consumer was $80. That's what they were finding. So they started offering season pass, hoping that people would buy that, and they were hoping they'd sell 5 million, and that obviously more people would buy the 4th download that way. They didn't sell that many. They sold 2, 3, 4 million, and they were selling that many fewer of each download. So I want to say Halo 5 figured this out first, and that was only a year and a half ago. But I know they did it, I can't think of a game before that, came up with the idea, let's give away free content, free DLC. And I'm sure other games have done it. The first one I really noticed was Halo. And the reason Halo did it is all games since probably 2010 that have DLC have also given you an opportunity to spend more money. So not just on the DLC, they've also given you a chance to buy in-game purchases. So they started doing microtransactions, offering you things to sell. And what Halo did with Halo 5 is free DLC. And Halo issued free DLC every month. So the game came out, I think, end of October. And I'm not sure if the first DLC pack came out till December, but it was like December, January, February, March, April, May. 6 months of free DLC. And what they told me at Microsoft, the 343 Industries, was that the cumulative spending in microtransactions on Halo 5 for that 6 months was greater than all DLC sales for any Halo game ever. Not cumulative for all the games, but each game. So I don't know what Halo DLC sales were. Let's just pretend $150 million. They did more than that in microtransactions in 6 months. That shocked me, and I asked why, and they said because every time we did DLC paid, we would lose some people. So if we had 20 million players and we offered DLC, we'd lose 10 million players, and that makes sense. And if we then did another one, we lose another 5 and another 2 and another whatever, and they just keep dropping down. When we make the DLC free, they keep playing. So we had more players 6 months into Halo than we had Halo 5, than we had 6 months into any other Halo game. And at the time, they told me that Halo 5 had sold about on par with Halo 1, 2, 3, 4, which totally makes sense. So, because I mean, the Microsoft, the Xbox installed base was probably similar to where it was with the 360 and where it was with the regular Xbox on the first one. So, it makes sense to me that if you give people free stuff, they play more, and you're not selling them DLC, but you're making it up in microtransactions. So back to your question. So Titanfall 2 is doing that. Now, I haven't paid attention to the downloads that have been available on Titanfall 2. I do know they've been free. I don't know how many, if there has been more than one, but they have been free. They will keep coming free. I'm pretty sure Electronic Arts saw what Respawn did on Titanfall 2, and DICE is going to emulate that with Battlefront 2. I think they hope to sell you more free stuff by keeping you more engaged. And that actually makes sense, because remember I said in a Call of Duty, 20 million guys buy one piece of DLC each. You know, some people buy more than one, but they sell 10 million of the first one, 5 of the second, 3 and then 2. So the average is one each. Well, you don't really need to get more than $15 of microtransactions out of those people, and you're even, but you have more people playing the game and more people delighted. And that actually probably helps you sell the next Call of Duty or the next Titanfall, the next Battlefront. So the reason you're seeing it with Titanfall and Battlefront is they didn't have a lot to lose, right? Those guys didn't historically sell a lot of DLC. It's going to be hard to get the Call of Duty guys to switch over because they do sell a lot of DLC. 20 million copies at $20, $400 million. You know, it's retail, but still a lot of money. That's a lot of microtransactions. Titanfall, you know, the last game sold like 8 million units for the game. So DLC probably was at most 8 million units. And so they're taking a chance, and I think they'll get it back with microtransactions. Battlefront, same thing. It sold 13 or 14 million, but it only had one DLC pack that did anything. So they're going to ditch that, and they're going to hope to sell you more in microtransactions. Our next question from SIFTD from P. Dober. Do you have a Doberman? I used to. My Dobie died. I loved him, though. He was a cool dog. His name was Rocky. PlayStation 3 production is about to end. Good. Once it does, how long do you think Sony will support PSN on PS3? Ooh, good question. The EULA says you only buy licenses to content and agree that Sony can discontinue access at any time. Will I lose access to my purchased games? Ooh, good question. What happened to users of OnLive when it shut down? Another good question. Okay, I don't know what happened to OnLive because PlayStation changed the name. So PlayStation took the Gaikai and OnLive users and migrated all that to PlayStation Now. So I don't think anybody lost anything, but I honestly don't know because I wasn't a big OnLive subscriber, user, player, and I have PS Now, but I don't play very often, and I don't even know if I bought anything on OnLive. So I'm not sure, but I think it's all part of PS Now. As far as PSN on PS3, yeah, it's a good question because PS3 will be viable on PSN as long as there are enough players to populate the servers. And not that servers cost very much, but you know, if they end up with like 10 people, 10 concurrent players, the games aren't going to be fun. So I would say if any game drops below 100,000 kind of concurrent players, where it actually makes sense to keep servers open, that's when they'll start shutting it down. So it'll be gradual. I think it'll probably take 2 or 3 years. I actually didn't know until you asked the question that they were stopping making the PS3. I don't know why they would do that. To me, it'd like make it for 99 bucks. So my cute little story is that from age 0 to age 5, my kids had this nanny, and she came in every day because I have identical twins. So we just had her help until they went off to real school. And I remember right when she was leaving, we'd given her 6 months notice and we paid her, But 6 months before she left, she told me that she had just bought her boyfriend a PlayStation, and did I have any games? So, it's 2005, right? So I bring home like 20 PS2 games, and I go scrounging in my cupboard for because I got everything free, like everything I'd played free, and I hand her like 40 of them, right? She goes home, she comes back the next day with a bag of 40 games, and she goes, "Oh no, he has a PlayStation 1. And I was like, "Shit. You just bought it?" And she had literally just bought it for 49 bucks. Now I'm laughing because I had to think about what year this is. That was exactly 10 years after the PS1 launched. So I guess this makes sense. Like the PS3 came out in 2006. So of course by the end of 16, it's time. I get it. It just doesn't feel like it's that old. But I was laughing, and so then I told her, well, take all these games in, and some of them were still in shrink wrap. I'm like, take them into GameStop and trade them in. And she told me, they only gave her like, whatever, $5 per game or something. But she had $100 to spend, and she bought like 35 PS1 games, because I was shocked GameStop still had them, but they did. So she bought the guy, like Madden 02 or whatever, but he was pretty excited about it. Anyway, so I guess that makes sense, but in any case, I think Sony supports it until it doesn't make economic sense to do so. So I would say when you start getting people dropping off, even trying to play the games. As far as access to your games, that's a good question. These guys Microsoft's been vocal about it. They keep making older games backward compatible. So I think like Red Dead Redemption, the original one. So I think Sony's going to probably figure out a way to make most of your games backward compatible. But if you bought stuff like Katamari or whatever, that's not a popular title, they're not going to remaster it or make it work on the PS4. So odds are they're going to say sorry, and that's why they have a license that reads that way. Now, I know Riley Russell, who's the general counsel for PlayStation, and I'm going to see him at E3. I'm going to actually find out the answer to this question. I'm going to ask him, provided I haven't had too many scotches by the time I see him. Our next question from SIFTD from OTT Apps. What apps aren't OTT? Okay. Pac-Man. Never been called that before. We know that there will be 3 studios working on Star Wars Battlefront 2. Are there any added complications when publishers take this approach? God, these are like the best questions we've ever had. Will this impact how much it costs to make the game in any way? Cheers. Okay, so here's the answer to the question. And the reason I say this is so smart, you probably didn't know this, but with the exception of games like The Division was made, I think, by one studio. But every other Ubisoft game that's like an action open world game, multiple studios. So Assassin's Creed, multiple studios. For Honor, multiple studios. Ghost Recon, multiple studios. And they literally are cross-continent. I went to lunch with a guy, Evan, what's his last name? Hirsch, Engine Company number 4. He's a game consultant. And he used to help Ubisoft, he used to consult with them and work with them on how to streamline all the processes between all these studios, because it is crazy complicated. So your question is really, really smart. It is really complicated. And the problem with it is, and again, I'm oversimplifying something I don't understand, so please accept that I'm an idiot when it comes to game making. But it's like making a car. And you're going to manufacture a car, except that you're going to have the body made in one continent, the engine made in the other, and all the electronics that make it all work together somewhere else, and then assemble it, and put it together, and stuff happens where it just doesn't quite work. So that's the problem, and what ends up happening is the seams between SEAM, the seams between all the things they slap together require even more work to make everything work flawlessly, and they work on different stuff. So yes, it's super complicated. Why would you do it? Well, on Battlefront 2, I'm guessing it's because it's an ambitious game with a limited time period to make it, so they only had 2 years really to make it, It's not that it's going to be tied to the Star Wars movie in terms of plot, but it is absolutely timed to the Star Wars movie in terms of release date. So it's coming out like November 15th, 3 or 4 weeks before the movie. They don't have any choice. They must get it out before the movie. That's part of their deal with Disney. So part of the reason they're using 3 studios is they have to save time. They got to get more bodies on it and make sure it works. With Ubisoft, it's a little different. Ubisoft just wants to make sure nobody holds them hostage. So if you're familiar with Rockstar Games, who makes Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, they had 3 guys they called the Rockstar Triumvirate. Les Benzies, who's no longer there, Sam and Dan Houser, and those guys are the secret sauce that makes the games amazing. And Les left, but those 3 guys extorted from Take-Two a huge package. So they get like half of the profit on the games. They get 49% outright ownership of any new IP. Fortunately, that deal's been in place since 2009, and there hasn't been any new IP since 2009. But someday they will actually launch a new game. And Ubisoft gets spooked by that. They don't want to see anybody extort them and say, yeah, Assassin's Creed's pretty good, try making it without us. The Housers could pull that off with Take-Two. They could say, try making GTA without us. It wouldn't happen. So Ubi got freaked, and so they split up responsibility for all their games. So Jade Raymond, working on Battlefront 2, was an Assassin's Creed producer. She left. Assassin's Creed didn't go downhill. Patrice Desilets, stud. Panache Digital Games was an Assassin's Creed creative director. He left. Nothing happened. The games kept being good. So they want to make sure. Yeah, some of them were. Well, they made a couple of good ones after he left. They just want to make sure that nobody holds them hostage. So they split up the tasks elsewhere. So the answer to your question is, it does cost more to do it in multiple studios, but in the long run, it probably doesn't, because you don't have to pay 50% of profits to the studio team. Okay, our last question this week from SIFTD, from Dan Childers. Why do publishers often risk releasing an unfinished game at the end of a fiscal quarter to potentially bad commercial and critical reception rather than push it back for a month or two? Boy, what a great question. It's because they chose to ask public equity investors to own their company. And so if the owners insist on the publishers delivering consistent and dependable earnings, then the publishers have to deliver games on time. And it's a hard dilemma. If you want to be private, then you can make games and you deliver them when they're done. And that's what Blizzard has done for years. That's what Rockstar does. Both part of public companies, and Rockstar causes heartburn for Take-Two all the time because they deliver their games when they're done. South Park got delayed. It happens. It wasn't ready. And the risk there was that you would have pissed off Trey Parker and Matt Stone if you released a game that didn't get good critical reception. So the publisher shouldn't release an unfinished game, and they shouldn't release a bad game. And yeah, they do. Sometimes they're bad because the publishers actually don't know how to quality test the game in process. Sometimes they get delusional and they think that everything they do is great. I mean, it's hard. I was talking to David Perry, who used to run down in
Shiny Entertainment.
Yeah, Shiny. Thank you. Shiny. I always get Shiny and Obsidian mixed up because I think a Shiny is Obsidian. He ran Shiny and he made, I think it was the Matrix game.
It was.
But I think this is the game that he told me the story about.
Yeah.
I think it was the first of his Matrix games, not the second or third, but the first Matrix game. And I think he told me that they couldn't finish it in time to get. It was definitely a game. I'm not sure it was Matrix, but they couldn't finish the game in time to hit the deadline. So what they did was they put a boss in at the end that you had to kill, and the boss was unkillable. So no matter what you did, you couldn't kill it. And he said, we did this because we figured that the game reviewers would get there, and there's no game reviewer alive who would admit that they suck so bad that they couldn't beat the final boss. And he said, so we couldn't finish the game because we didn't have anything more to do. So we just figured everybody would stop playing and give up trying to kill the boss after a few hours. And I thought that was a great story. So David Perry's my idol because he would actually admit something like that. And here I am 10 years later, 12, 15 years later, telling it on camera. So thank you for joining us for this week's Pachter Factor Fellow Babies. If you don't follow me on Twitter, I invite you to, because it's free, at Michael Pachter. If you are not watching this on SIFTD.net, you're getting free content from me, then you can give me back something free. Follow me on Twitter. If you are watching on SIFTD, we appreciate your patronage. You're keeping Shane's unborn babies in diapers and in future college education. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.